absolute good. The list is life.
Oskar Schindler's List, showing the names of more than 1,000 Jews he saved from the Holocaust. You know, it is alive. It's an historic symbol of such unspeakable suffering, a document itself that spared souls and inspired that Oscar-winning film by that same name by Steven Spielberg. But now there's a legal battle playing out over the list and who actually owns it. Turns out a woman who apparently cared for the German industrialist and his wife in their final years claims the family gave her the papers and never meant them to end up in the Holocaust Museum in Israel. So, why this fight over something so important and resonating with such meaning? Ninaz Shafari joins us now. She is a criminal defense attorney, and Peter Odom, a former prosecutor. Peter and Ninaz, welcome. Peter, let me start with you.
Thank you.
I mean, this list, it's sacred, right? It's not just priceless.
Indeed.
It's morally, deeply meaningful. It's part of the human spirit that they faced in the face of the Holocaust. So why is it in court?
Well, because the widow's estate, that is the widow of Oskar Schindler, is making a claim that these documents belong to the estate, that they actually belong to Amelia Schindler, Oskar Schindler's wife. Now, this claim has some very legitimate aspects to it. In my view, it's a legitimate claim. There are historical documents that back it up, and essentially it's going to come down to a question of credibility. The person who's bringing the claim on behalf of the widow's estate is Professor Rosenberg. She's from Argentina, and she is actually a legitimate person who had a legitimate relationship with the Schindlers. She not only cared for them, but she is also Amelia Schindler's biographer. Now, the estate has been making this claim about these documents for over 15 years, and there's every reason to believe that, in fact, it was Amelia, the widow, who was in legitimate possession of these documents, and not this other person who had an affair with Oskar Schindler, who claims to be the one to have given them to Israel.
Ninaz, do you think that the court in Jerusalem will see it that way?
How exactly the documents ended up with the museum will likely play a major role in the trial. What the museum is arguing is that at the time the documents were given to the caretaker of Oskar Schindler was still alive, so it was before his death. And at the time Schindler died, he had been separated from his wife for nearly 20 years. It's in the public interest, the museum would argue, and I believe, that the documents remain with the museum where it can be on public display and where future generations can be reminded of this tragedy. The motives have to be questioned. The motives of this professor. If she's a legitimate person who is a legitimate heir, that's one thing. On the other hand, she can't possibly have any sentimental value towards these documents. It's very likely for financial gain. If she is a legitimate heir and Schindler gave those documents at the time he was alive, then she would have no claim to them.
Yeah, you know, the museum, you're right, Peter, the museum is pretty tough on her, on the professor, saying this is a, quote, opportunistic, cynical, exploitive attempt to get rich. The museum condemns this. They say it is legally and morally wrong. And it is kind of complicated because apparently he had this affair with this woman. They were separated. The papers were in a suitcase. His wife didn't know about them at first. Then they got to a journalist who gave them to the museum. So what do you think will happen when this gets to court? And why, you know, wouldn't the professor say, look, they belong in the museum, they're in the public interest, or does she just want financial claim from them?
Let me make a couple of points. First of all, the professor is making these claims on behalf of the estate. Okay, she wants these documents brought back into the estate because they were stolen. That's the claim, that they were actually stolen. And if that's true, and there's every reason to believe that it is true that they were stolen, then the museum, however noble its intentions, is in no better a position legally than the person that stole them. If they were in fact stolen, then they need to be returned to the rightful owner so that the rightful owner can decide what to do with them.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think that the court's going to give them back to the estate of the widow, and the widow has already given lots of documents to a museum in Bonn, Germany. I believe that that's what the estate will do with these documents, but at least the estate, the legitimate owner, will have the chance to decide their fate, not the Israeli government.
And Ninaz, finally, what do you think will happen? You think that, I mean, it could go to the estate, and then the estate then, as Peter says, could give it to a museum.
Well, if her interest is in giving it to the museum, why not just leave it with the museum? I think they have no proof that the documents were stolen. If they did, they would have come forward with that proof. The other thing is that in terms of her having the interest of the estate, there are no family members that are out there that are part of the estate. She's the executor of the estate. She's the only heir. And it doesn't appear that her interest is in having the document displayed in a museum. There is huge financial gain to be had from this. It appears that each document is worth at least $3 million.
Well, Ninaz and Peter, thank you. We'll be following up this case. You know, in a certain way, I guess it's actually so meaningful, but it's also kind of sad
Indeed.
that it would
Good
end
to
up
be here.
in court. Thank you for both of us.
Thanks
for
so
joining
much.
us.
Thank you.